In today's video, I want to talk about how you can best answer the tell me about yourself question. Now, the tell me about yourself question is probably the most open-ended question there is in an interview, but it's also probably the one that's used the most because it really helps the interviewer really gauge, does this person know what they're doing? Do they know why they're here? How seasoned are they? Do they know how to answer this question? Essentially, if you know how to answer this question, it would go a long way in just showing that you are a self-aware individual. So in this video, I'm going to be explaining what are some of the best ways to answer this question so that you can land a good first impression in your interview. So without further ado, let's get started. Now, the first thing that you want to do is you want to provide structure to this answer. And a very simple format is to explain where are you from, where are you at now, and where do you want to go. And think about it this way, if you have about 2 to 3 minutes to answer this question, that's a pretty good window to spend about a little bit of time on the past, a little bit on the present, and a little bit on the future. And the reason why it's important is because the person who read your resume is doing the interview. And with every resume, there's always going to be questions that people want to ask, right? And ultimately, they want to know who is this person and how is it relevant to the job? And is this job a good fit for them? And they essentially want to know, is this relationship going to work? And so that's why you have to use that past, present, and future approach. And if you've done your due diligence in conducting research, and if you looked at my previous video on how to prepare for an interview, you would know that you should have looked at the job description and you would have prepared an answer for this. Now, by using the past, present, and future format, you can talk about what led you to this job. The present is kind of like, why are you a good fit for this role? How has your past experience prepared you for this role? And finally, where do you want to go? It's kind of like aspirations, and that shows your directionality in terms of where you want to grow, how you want to grow, and is this growth in alignment with the needs of the team, right? So it's actually a pretty deep question if you understand what the person is really trying to understand here. And that's why by using a past, present, and future approach, you can structure your answer so that you can take care of each one of these concerns. And if you are a career changer or a non-traditional candidate, that's really important as well, right? This is the spot for you to explain, hey, I spent 5 to 10 years of my life taking care of someone, whether it's your parents or your kids or a partner. There's a million reasons why someone may have left the workforce. Or perhaps you are making a transition to another career and some of your past experiences may be relevant to this current role, but that hiring manager may not know unless you tell it to them, right? Because some of these experiences aren't that apparent. And that brings me to my second point, which is you really need to highlight your relevant skills and experiences. And it's really in the past and present stage where you explain how are some of my past skills and experiences relevant to the job at hand based on what you see in a job description. And perhaps you have some key achievements or key projects that you've worked on or delivered that you can really highlight during the stage. Once again, follow the STAR format: the situation, the task, the action, and the result. The third thing that you really need to nail home in this stage is to tell a story, right? So don't just spout off a bunch of skills and accolades and achievements and just hopefully that will do the job. What the past, present, and future format lends itself to is storytelling. So make sure you tell a story so that the interviewer knows, oh, this is the person that I'm interviewing. This is their journey. And this current role that they're interviewing for makes sense in their whole journey. And I'll give you a personal example in this case. So when I was interviewing as a teacher back for my very first job, one of the stories that I told was that growing up, I loved working with kids. I gained a lot of energy just from teaching kids. And I gave some examples of working at camps and working at different educational situations, which really inspired me to, steer my career towards this direction. I then also told the story of how growing up, I loved watching historical films, right? These are things that really drove my interest and I just naturally gravitated towards it. Whether it's in school or out of school, I just naturally gravitated towards history. And so I took a bunch of history courses and I aligned that with education and working with kids, and therefore I chose to be a history teacher. And all my past experiences have built me up to this stage of going to teachers college and then applying for an international teaching role. And then I also explained how that aligned with my values, right? So I'm a Christian and that was a Christian school that I applied for, and therefore it made sense, right? All those pieces put together made sense. And that's how I landed my very first role. And for every role that I've applied to, whether it's for academia, for my business and telling stories in my business, or even in my current role, all these things have to make sense. I'm not telling you to lie about your story, but you really need to have a self-awareness in terms of what led you to where you are right now. And a candidate with a good story, with a good sense of directionality, and just self-awareness of why they're doing what they're doing, they're much more likely to land that role. And therefore, a brief anecdotal story would go a long way in answering, tell me about yourself. And the fourth and final thing that you want to do is to practice and refine your answer. And nowadays, it's actually very easy to do that. And all you gotta do is just record yourself. Pull out a camera and try answering that question. If you look at yourself answering that question, you will have a very good idea of how someone else feels when they see how you're answering that question. And it's very much like how I edit my own videos, right? And as someone who works on YouTube videos a lot, I see myself speak a lot. And those are all data points on how I can speak better, whether it's slowing down, being more articulate, having better eye contact with the camera and not looking at the screen, or instead of like I'm looking at the hole in the camera. These are all things that would go a long way in improving how you present yourself. In addition, it would also help you reflect and plug any gaps that may appear that you may not be aware of. Because when people ask you a question, you're riffing and you're unsure of yourself, people would tend to ramble. And by rambling, you will extend your 2 to 3 minute answer to perhaps be a 5 to 10 minute answer. And before you know it, there's no time for the interview, and basically you've already lost your candidacy, right? So you gotta be very self-aware in this process, and that's only through practice and only by rehearsal. And oftentimes I would recommend people to bring a paper and pen to answer questions in an interview. But the problem with using a paper and pen in this situation for this particular question is that you can't talk about yourself. Why do you need a paper and pen to talk about yourself? So this is one of those questions that should be second nature, and you should just be able to nail this one home. So therefore, I would recommend you to really practice and work on this one. And even if they don't ask you, tell me about yourself, they'll ask some kind of tell me about yourself question, or like walk me through your resume, what led you here, why are you interested in this job. These are all past, present, future questions that may show up. So even if they don't ask this particular question, preparing for it won't hurt, and it'll give you that self-clarity in terms of where you're at and where you want to go and closing that gap. And finally, another good thing about recording it is you're able to ask people for feedback. So just show it to your friends or family and get that feedback so that they can help you hone your answer. So I hope this video was helpful to you. Essentially, you got to structure your answer. You got to highlight the relevant skills and experiences. You got to practice, 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 and rehearse and refine, right? And make sure you just really deliver impact in terms of the story so that it's memorable and you really stand out. If you like this video, please give it a like, share, subscribe, follow, the usual stuff. And if you have any thoughts about this video, please let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, or perhaps you've got some ideas that perhaps I missed, and I would love to learn more. All right, everyone, hope you have a good one. Take care.